All right, everyone, let's talk about it. The JEE main for April 8th is officially in the books. First off, just take a second. You did it. That's a huge deal. What we're going to do right now is break down exactly what that paper was like based on what students, people just like you, have been saying. So let's get right into it.
Okay, so let's be real. Was that what you expected? Did you walk out of there thinking, yep, nailed it? Or was it more like, whoa, where did that come from? We're going to go through the whole thing piece by piece so you can see if what you felt matches up with what everyone else is saying.
So, what's the overall verdict? The big picture summary. Let's not waste any time. The feedback from both students and experts really points to one very, very specific theme for this exam.
And here's the thing, it was a real balancing act. On one side, the paper's difficulty was, well, moderate. The questions themselves weren't impossible, they were mostly manageable. But, and this is a huge but, on the other side, the paper was long, super lengthy. And that meant time management wasn't just a skill, it was the skill. It really became the biggest fight for pretty much everyone. It wasn't about what you knew, but how fast you could prove you knew it.
And speaking of that time crunch, well, that leads us straight to the main culprit. The one section that really set the tone for this entire exam. You probably already know what I'm talking about. Let's dive into the biggest hurdle of the day, mathematics.
Okay, the feedback here was crystal clear, everyone was saying the same thing. The math section was moderate in terms of difficulty, but it was just so lengthy, so calculation heavy. It wasn't really about these crazy out-of-the-box concepts. Nope, it was all about those long, multi-step problems that just felt like they would never end. They were absolute clock killers. So if you felt that squeeze, trust me, you were in good company.
So where did all that precious time actually go? Well, let's look at the evidence. The big hitters were all there. A huge chunk of calculus, of course, but also heavyweights like vectors and 3D and coordinate geometry. And look, these topics are famous for being absolute time sinks, right? They're not the kind of problems you can just glance at and solve. They demand precision, step after step after step, which is exactly why so many people felt that time crunch.
All right, so if maths was the mountain you had to climb, where were the easier paths? Where could you actually rack up some serious points? Well, let's talk about the bright spots, physics and chemistry. These were the sections where students felt they could really shine.
Yeah, physics was a totally different ballgame. The general feeling was that it was moderate and, more importantly, totally scoreable. Why? Because it was mostly formula-based and conceptual. It wasn't trying to trick you. If you knew your formulas cold and really got the core ideas, you could just fly through this section. It was a fantastic place to build up your score and your confidence.
And if we zoom in a bit, you see a pretty familiar picture. You had your classic topics, mechanics, current electricity, modern physics, all showing up as expected. Honestly, it was a very balanced paper. It wasn't throwing curveballs. It was designed to reward students who had a really solid grasp of the main syllabus from class 11 and 12. No big shocks here.
And the good news just keeps on coming with chemistry. This section was also widely seen as easy to moderate. And the number one takeaway, the absolute golden rule, NCERT. It was all about the NCERT curriculum. We heard over and over that so many questions felt like they were lifted straight from the textbook, with a big focus on theory. You can see it right here. The big topics were all present and accounted for. Chemical bonding, coordination compounds, and a good helping of organic chemistry. The message from this paper couldn't have been louder or clearer. If you wanted to do well in chemistry, you had to know your NCERT inside and out. That was your ticket to a great score.
Okay, so we've looked at maths, physics, and chemistry. We know the story of each section. But let's get to the real bottom line, right? What does all of this actually mean for your final score? Let's put it all together and talk about that magic number everyone's wondering about.
And there it is, the number you need to know. To hit that amazing 99th percentile, experts are predicting you'll need a score somewhere in the 170 to 180 range. And that number tells a story, doesn't it? It shows that even though the questions were manageable, that brutal time limit probably stopped scores from skyrocketing. It kept things in a very specific range.
So, if we boil this whole thing down, what are the top 3 takeaways from the April 8th exam? Lesson 1. Time management was everything. Your ability to get through that long math section was the game changer. Lesson 2, accuracy over ambition. With negative marking, it was way smarter to get fewer questions right than to guess on a bunch. Choosing your battles was key. And lesson 3, NCERT is still king, especially in chemistry. That textbook was your best friend.
And that's our breakdown. So now that you've seen the analysis, I have a question for you.
What's your single biggest takeaway? What's the one lesson you're going to hold on to for the next big challenge, whether that's GE Advanced or something else entirely? Think about it. Thanks so much for tuning in, and seriously, all the very best for whatever comes next.